Good morning, welcome to Swift Heroes The Extra. My name is Lucy James and we are broadcasting to you live from Turin, from the new Advento Live studio. 2 weeks ago we had the pleasure of being joined by so many of you here in Turin for Swift Heroes 2022. There were about 250 of you that joined us here in Turin and another 700 online. So thank you to everyone who joined in for the show. Today we're going to have a quick recap about what happened at that event and also flip over to a fresh presentation for you. Honestly, the iOS Swift learning never stops over here. So I'm joined today by Stefano Mondino. Steph, hey.
Hi, ciao Lu.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good.
Love to be here.
Yeah. So we were together a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Prowling around on stage.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
It was so much fun.
Totally.
You had some real peak life moments there, didn't you?
Yeah, it was, super cool to be there, interview all the speakers and have a chat and know so many people. So it was really cool.
And it really was. If any of you that are connected today were with us online, you'll know that it had a really special feeling actually, Swift Heroes this year. Brilliant presentations, but just the networking, the interaction online and in person with each other, with sponsors. It was a different level, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually it was something that all the people in the community really needed after 2 years of basically nothing live in real venues. So I had the chance to talk with many people and everyone was thrilled about being there, chat, talk about stuff, Swift stuff and whatsoever. And also they were thrilled by some of the presentations that were really cool and really impressive, let's say impressive.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Now, we all know that you loved the presentation from Christoph Zablocki, which
didn't.
It was amazing, right?
Yeah.
But like I say, it's been a couple of weeks. You've had time to digest it all. What else for you was some of the the learning highlights, perhaps?
Well, actually, what was really strange for me this year is that usually you learn a lot from conferences and talks and whatsoever. But from one of the talks I witnessed from the audience with the other guys, I actually solved a problem I had in one of our applications dealing with Bluetooth stuff. It was something that we didn't think about. It was something related when your application goes to the background and then you can show a notification to the user asking it to reopen it again. It's just a quick highlight from what was my Swift Heroes, but it was really a cool presentation. And of course, as we spoke about during the conference, the talk from Shai Mishali, which is a friend, more than a personal hero, at this moment is just a friend, and it was really cool for stuff related to the Swift concurrency new framework. So really interesting. I should definitely try it out. Also, I loved the presentation from my colleague Davide Repetto, who was the first time but really nailed, and also Gaetano, who was his first presentation as well for a presentation about the collection views, really nailed it again. And also I like the obscure Swift presentation by Pavel, who was really mind-blowing again. Really hard to understand, but really mind-blowing. I suggest to check it out once it's available.
That's really cool. You're right. There were lots of brilliant presentations, some of them really technical.
Yeah.
One of the things that I personally liked as well was there was a mix also of some soft skill presentations.
Yeah, it was really important, really cool. It was really a nice presentation because it's important to be technical and be capable of dealing with technical stuff, but also be able to deal with others and the soft skill part. It's really important in our job.
Quite right.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the chance to join us at Swift Heroes, if you want to recap, if your colleagues want to see exactly what it is that we're talking about today, upskill passes are still available online. They are available from the Swift Heroes website. You buy a pass, you can access the event platform, and you can see all of those presentations, all the ones that Steph mentioned, and more. So take a look there if you still want to look at that Swift Heroes content. Right now, I believe we've got an exclusive for everybody online. Yeah, the crowd goes wild. We've got the event review video that we can share.
Yeah, let's see.
What do you say? Should we give it a roll?
Sure.
Give it a roll, or hit the button.
Let's see.
Welcome to Swift Heroes, everybody. Welcome to Turin. See you in 2023. So there you go, this Swift Heroes review video. Now at the end you heard me say, see you in 2023. It's not true, we're here today for the extra. We're going to have a fresh presentation from Anna Zharkova. Let's connect Anna just now. Anna, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Great to have you. How are you today?
Thanks, I'm okay, and I'm ready to show you my content, and I hope it will be interesting for the spectators.
I'm sure it will, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us for this extra Swift Heroes session. Steph, you want to say hi?
Ciao, Hannah.
Ciao.
I'm really eager to see your presentation about this because it's something I really deal a lot in my job, so I really want to check that out.
Yes, ServerDriven UI, especially SwiftUI, is a trendy and it's really blowing up content. So I hope it will be useful.
Yeah, sure it will.
Perfect. So Anna, we're going to let you get on with your presentation. Have a good one. We're going to show a quick slide and then it's over to you.
Well, hi everyone once again. My name is Anna Zharkova. I'm lead mobile developer in Usetech software company, and today I would like to present you my talk about ServerDriven SwiftUI managing declarative UI. I hope it will be interesting for you and really useful because it's really interesting and trendy approach to build SwiftUI applications. It could be really difficult, but it also useful to know how to deal with such things or how to use such things, or maybe to know that such things exist in the world. So at the beginning, a few words about myself. I do mobile development since 2013. I'm both iOS and Android native developer, and also I'm fond of cross-platform mobile development. I'm developer of Kotlin multi-platform, and I'm a Kotlin GDE for this technology. Also, I'm a leader of mobile team. I'm a mentor for my junior developers, and I'm a tutor in others. So though I do a lot of stuff for Kotlin multi-platform, I also do a lot of stuff for iOS, especially for SwiftUI. And I write articles about mobile development for both these teams, and I'm a public speaker. So today we will discuss about SwiftUI, its declarative UI conception, though everyone, I hope the most of the people know nowadays what is SwiftUI. It's every time useful to recap something. Then we will talk about ServerDriven UI and how to deal with it with SwiftUI. Um, the main thrilling part is how to prepare the controls and process the data, and then how to work with data and states in SwiftUI application. Because at first sight, it could be just like a website that you have uploaded and showing in your mobile application. So let's begin. Uh, as the most of you know, or maybe all of you know, Apple introduced this technology in 2019, and it was some kind of blowing up because it was another approach that using interface builder or auto layout to create declarative style programming, and it was declared as super easy, super fast, and super innovative tool to build applications. And yes, it is. What is the specialty of this? Is the main specialty of this technology is using declarative syntaxes for everything: UI, navigation, properties. Everything could be done with declarative style. Of course, if we're speaking about UI, because for your business logic, you can write the logic you have used previously with previous approach. So here is a sample, how looks the sample screen with a small list of some data, for example, the list of the news or maybe movies or everything you would like to show in single list with different rows, and when you tap on it, you're going next screen. So here is a small recap. And also you can use declarative syntax to customize everything. So there is no outlets, there is no storyboards, zips. You use a code, you use commands to describe your screen and put everything declaratively um, with every property you use to this. These special properties are called modifiers. How this technology works and how this screen processed at the UI we used to see in our application. So under the hood of SwiftUI is a standard UI kit application. Yes, all the controls works like just like Proxy for your standard UI controls, and you use no commands such as add subview or remove subview. You cannot add or remove subview dynamically, but you can put everything in some kind of declarative construction, and then it will be processed by special functional builder view builder that was announced with Swift 5.1. And it took some blocks of different views, composed them together with their properties, and then process a tuple of the result view. And there is a schema how it works under the hood. So, and it's enough to write some kind of declarative construction where you put subviews under the parent view, add some kind of properties, modifiers, and then it will be processed automatically in such kind of construction. And also, when we opening memory graph or maybe the UI graph, we can see that everything that contains words, UI controller, UI view, is also exist in SwiftUI, but it is under its hood. So we are working with a kind of proxy, and this is proxy that allows us to use a code without any outlets or visual implementation of our UI. And this is a point where we can use some kind of approach that could help us to make everything dynamically, and we could specify everything, for example, in some source, and then it will be processed in some kind of screen. Yes, we use code. Let's use a code and let's get this code from our backend or maybe some kind of server. For example, how it works. At first sight, it is kind of JSON. This JSON contains a structure of some elements with its children, type specified. Maybe sometimes you can specify also the default value or maybe not default value for every element, and then it will be processed in some kind of UI that will be shown on your screen. And this JSON could be uploaded from your server, or maybe you can get it from some kind of service just like Firebase, or maybe you can store all the JSONs on your application and process them dynamically at runtime and then show them in your client application. So there is different variations, but the conception is the same. You use some kind of JSON, and then all your UI will be rendered accordingly to this JSON. And also here you can specify some kind of dynamically changed properties or maybe styles, and you can manage this style from the sources where you generate all this JSON. So how we will be dealing with this tool? We need to build some kind of processor, and there is not too much ready-made solutions for SwiftUI. Of course, there are a lot of own solutions for every developer who are fond of this technology and who use server-driven UI in their application. But there is now some kind of special production tool that could be used everywhere. Every developer builds own tool for this, or mostly use some kind of existing approach and add some things that he or she needs in their work. So our JSON will be processed by our special processor that we will speak about a little bit later, and we will get some kind of structure that will contains the brief description for our screen with type, some elements. Of course, all our controls will be presented as a hierarchy of some controls with encoded properties. We can use some kind of common briefly description for our controls or elements, or can provide some different elements description for our JSONs. And then we need to process all these things to real controls and then render them in our screen. So let's begin from preparation our controls. Here is our screen structure. When we work with the SwiftUI screen, we use special kind of view for our screen. And this screen will have some kind of type that will help us to understand what type of screen we need to decode correctly. And also the type of screen will be a key value to bound with some kind of ViewModel or other business logic. Every screen could contain its own navigation. Of course, when we work with first screen, it will be some kind of navigation view, and we understand that when we create another screen in our screen chains, there should be no root navigation element, and there will be some kind of another root, such as stack, vertical or horizontal, or maybe Z stack. So this element that will be the main container for other elements will be the main child for our screen, or maybe for our navigation element. And then in this main container we will put all our elements. Every element could also contain its own children with their own properties. And to decode all our elements, we need to create some kind of basic element with some kind of basic properties. The view properties is a structure with all decoded properties. It could define only properties you need to use in your basic element, and for every element that need to get some extra properties, they need to be declared in some other variables. Also, we need to specify the type of our element and the data key. The data key will be used for binding with data, and also we can specify some field for data, but this will mainly shouldn't be decoded. But if you would like to provide all the data with your element as a static, you could put here some your own data. Of course, we need some kind of identifier, and also we need to provide something for our target, because some kinds of our elements could be clickable, such as buttons, or have some kind of events such as changing the text in text field. And also our element need to specify the field for the array of children. So, what will be done with our element? The basic element is the base class for all our elements we need to specify in our application. And all this element will be analogs for their controls. Button element is for button, image element for image, list element for list, text element for text, text field element text field, stack for stack, and etc. If you need to provide some kind of custom elements, you can also specify it here if you need it. Well, it looks like the same situation when we talk about what SwiftUI controls are the analogs of UIKit controls. Maybe yes, because there is only a description of the element, and to create the element, we need to render it. We need to specify some kind of protocol. For example, Renderable. One of my first programming languages was C#, and I used to use I prefix for every protocol or interface I use. So here is protocol iRenderable, and it will contain some kind of method that have to be defined in a special class, and as an output it will provide some kind of any view. Why any view? Of course, it anonymizes the view we use in our application, but it helps us to commonize the logic. And you can see in the slide that for button element, we create a button with special kind of text. And this text we get from our data, or we can use predefined basic field title. And also I specify here some modifiers and action. How to provide an action, I will show you a little bit later. And also for modifiers. So in such way, we can render all our elements in special controls, and then anonymize their type with any. So also there is not only the simple elements as text or buttons. Of course, to create some special UI and to provide real business logic, we need to provide a logic for list, because every application contains one or more lists with different elements. So we need to specify a list. List is a collection of some kind of elements. So for every row that will be dependent from some kind of data, we need to call in a circle in a loop, the rendering of every item with special kind of element. So also for list element, we need to specify as a root, or maybe some kind of other structure, the type of the element that will be used as a row for this list. And also list is not only view that could contain some kind of children. Also there is a stacks, and the stacks have an array of children, and for every child for each loop we are making some kind of rendering and putting some kind of data we will search later in our data, or maybe there will be some kind of hard-coded data, or maybe some kind of provided by default for this element. Um, So in case if we need to put all the data in moment of rendering, we know that SwiftUI changes its view when we make some kind of rendering. So data will be put in this moment. So there is how works rendering elements with children. And let's speak about properties. Properties need to contain some kind of common properties for our element. What will be common for every control for SwiftUI we use? There's also frames, spacing, alignments, background. For some kind of elements, we can also predefine font, though it also could be specified as some special kind of button or maybe some kind of text element, text field. We could provide it not only in common view properties, and also there is padding and border. And we need to create a modifier for every property we would like to render with our controls. For example, with the font modifier, we are putting some kind of font data. It is a structure that contains all fields, weight, size, foreground color. We get all the data and then we put it as a special modifiers for our control, or if there is no such data for font, we return after the processing our original view, our original content, I mean. And also we can provide some kind of common method that will, or common modifier that will collect all our defined modifiers and put them together for our view and modifying its properties, just like this. And if there will be a data for this modifier will be rendered at some kind of control we processing at moment. And to simplify the application, we need to provide some kind of extension and use an element as a link. Of course, at this moment, we need to think about what we need to do with memory leaks, because it's really important when we don't want to use structures. And for such kinds of events, when we need to bound different elements, it will be easy to use a class as a reference type, not the value type of structure, even the structure is more lightweight when using a lot of data. So, and here is a sample how we can apply modifier to our text. For example, we can add also every modifier as a single modifier and also add all the modifiers of the elements at the same time. Well, at this moment, when we render all the data, we understood that we have some kind of UI that we have provided by JSON. And then there is a moment. If we will stay without any action, we will get only a static picture. There is nothing to do. Of course, we can specify some kind of navigation links, and we will speak about this a little bit later. It's also a part of my talk. But when we use some kind of buttons or maybe some kind of text fields, we need to get data and then process it. And also we need to specify some kind of action and um, to to call some kind of method, for example, from our ViewModel or maybe from our view, if we have defined something here. So we can also code an action as a special structure or class, what you would like or would you prefer. And also we need to specify here several moments. At first, when we call an action from button, it will be easy to call it without any parameters. So it should be a void method. When we do SwiftUI, it's really nice that in SwiftUI we shouldn't provide any return value and then show it in our view, but we could also call a method as a in our ViewModel, and then we will get a callback from some kind of property wrappers and subscribed property. So for our action, we need to specify two target types. Mainly from our view, we will call a method from our view, it will be an inner, or a business, it will be a method in our ViewModel. And then we need to provide an action as a string. Why we use a string? Because iOS have a nice mechanism of selectors that will let us to call a method for any NS object target we will specify. And of course, we have to specify this link for this target while render our screen, or maybe putting it at the root of our object and then bounded it with our elements if we need to provide some kind of action. So this is why we don't use structures and use classes. So for example, when we want like to call the selectors just like open screen or show item with or do something, we specify we could specify some kind of parameters, or we should specify no parameters. It depends of what we're doing at the moment. If we would like to use a method without parameters, we specify only an action name and an object. So we get an action name, and then we create a selector using this name of method. And then we check if our target responds to this selector, we will perform this selector. And this is a way how we could deal with different button clicks. When we would like to get some callbacks from our controls, for example, when we use text fields, mainly we use binding and we use some kind of property wrapper, and we are listening for this property wrapper. But when we create something dynamically, we couldn't put a property wrapper because there will be tricky to put in a reference between property wrapper and some other point in some other logic. This is why we need to specify some kind of custom control that will use both property wrapper to get a field and also a callback. A callback for a listener. It will be some kind of proxy view, and we will put this field and as you understand, it's just a text field, and it is a proxy, it's a wrapper over our text field. And then while rendering, we will create a listenable text field for example, and then we need to provide a callback from our action. So, and in this moment, we need to provide a parameter name for our view, for our action. And it will be easy to provide all the names in same structure we use to process our elements. So we need to provide also this in JSON. So let's make some kind of stop and speak about the challenges at the moment. Well, it seems we have to do a lot of job previously while preparing to work with our UI. So we need to prepare all the types. They should be defined previously. Also, there could be some differences between custom styles and views you have defined on your application and what would you could get from JSON. So you need also to decode all the properties you will receive and to specify them correctly. Also, we need to specify special decoding for extra fields because we shouldn't put everything in common element. It could be not correct. And also, there is a really sharp moment with memory leaks, and we need to think how to avoid them. So when we speak about classes, we could specify our links, and also it could help us. But unfortunately, we could not wikify the link for target, and a subject shouldn't be a wik. So we need to think about how clearing our links when we working with things, clearing our references, I mean. So, and now when we have defined everything, we could think about how to work with our processor. Let's make some kind of processor to create from JSON our screen. So here is our structure. Here is our screen, our root navigation, our element, and our child element in hierarchy. And we need to create the same structure in our JSON and then create the same structure in our elements. So to deal with it, we need to prepare decoder. It's not the simple JSON decoder, but I mean the decoder that will create some decoding data from our JSON. Then we need to use Screen Factory to create the correct screen using its type and then process all its elements to render them. And to process it, we need to use some kind of element factory. So let's take a look. I think that everyone knows how to use a JSON decoder. So let's begin from factory. We will use some kind of type, a type field in our element, and then using this type, we need to create new object for our screen. So it also could be some kind of predefined properties or some kind of default properties in this screen, what you would like or what you need. And then we need to process the special kind of ScreenItem. It is a control for our screen, and then we need to create from this our UI with rendering. So at first we need to process all our elements from basic and to create and specify them as the correct elements. So we need to begin from root and then put it in our processor of element to create the correct control. In our elements factory, we need to define processing of all elements. If we create them from basic element, we could do this just like this in this elements factory, specifying some different moments. But in this case, we understand that when we decode our element, so we use an element entity to decode all the data, some of the properties could be lost because there is no depending on them in elements key. But to do this and to help with this, we need to define a decoder in every element and even in element entity. And then when we get a value for type of the element, we should process it, and then we could call the processor, the decoder processor, for every element we would like to get, and then return it as a special kind of element. So yes, it will be tricky, but it's really working solution. Even there is some kind of struggles and challenges in this moment, how to not to lose elements. Why we use such kind of processing? Of course, we can define not only the dynamic structure, we can define some kind of elements and maybe some kind of structure with the child or special types, and then use decoding in usual way. But it will create a lot of different types, a lot of different entities, and of course, if you need to use only your entities, you could do this way. But if you would like to use it dynamically, you have to struggle and to find some kind of dynamic solution. Yes, dynamic work is not easy, it's not hard coding. So and now let's talk about what complex elements we should process for. So of course we have defined all the all custom common elements, and then we would like to get some kind of defined elements. For example, here is a here is some kind of my JSON, and you can see here that there is a data types, data keys, and also in the children you can specify some other elements. For example, for list we could specify also a label or distance maybe, and it will be in your entity for its row. So for the row you need to specify a label at distance. because list is a really nice sample of complex and complicated element we need to process. And as you see on the screen sample, there will be some difficult styles, some difficult elements, and when we create a list, the row of it contains not only one element with default values. So we need to process it correctly. How to deal with it? We can create our own element. For a list, it should be a stack element, so it's just like the sample I was talking about previously. And in this element, we defined not as children, but even as two separated elements, an image or a text. And you have noticed that on the row there were two text fields, but we are speaking about samples. So I think at this moment one text element is enough. So, and also we will put them together as children, and this type should be known for your parser, and you could provide here also your basic properties, not for common elements, but for these elements, and you need decode these elements separately. Yes, just like this as we was showing previously. So correct decoding could be really hard. And now let's talk about business logic and targets. SwiftUI and server-driven UI is not only for UI, because our application, our view also do something, not only showing us some kind of animation or maybe some kind of picture. We need to communicate with our UI and open other screens or perform other actions. This is why we need to connect our business logic and targets. And also, the data we will show in our screen could be changed. So we could, of course, we can specify all the data with our list, but it will be tricky to load the list commonly with data. And when we speak about our architecture, I think that this approach is really doubtful. So this is why we need to separate data from our views. And to provide correct data, or maybe to support the cases when the data could change, we need to provide ViewModel. And we will create it by factory using a type of our generated screen. So of course in our screen we have to specify the property for object, for observed object, and our model could be observable. And also it is not decoded properties. So how we will create? Here is our model. And we need to specify this model even as a model type. For example, we can use some kind of common interface or common basic model, and also we need to turn our model as an subject, because if you will not specify the new model as an object, you could not correctly use it as a target for your selectors. Just like this, we create screens, and then we recursively going through all the elements and putting together the model and our elements. So we connecting them, and we need to specify for our element both the target for element, or maybe correct the target if we would like to use not your business logic, but the methods from your view. So here is a sample how it could be done. And of course we need to think about the memory leaks, because we are putting it as an object, and then we need to clear this reference in our element when we will re-render it. And then let's put the data. If our data will be changing, we need to put it correctly. So at first, how it could be done when we provide the same data in our SameJson. So we use SameJson for providing our views and data. Just like sample, we put here the title for our button, the data key. the data key will be used to search in common data. And then also we provide here some properties and our action. So, and this title value will be rendered in our button. And how we could done with data. In previous slides, you see that there were a lot of mentions of data parameter, data, and the data was used for rendering. So data will be a structure, and this structure could define some kind of key, some kind of identifier, some kind of children, and also we need to specify correctly the value for this data. So here is any for data um, as a sample, but we could also put here some kind of JSON dictionary and then process them depending on what you would like to do with your elements. And this data will be bound with the keys. So we will search during the structure of this data. As you could notice, the children we provide in every data element these children, because the data structure should have same structure, same hierarchy that we will show in our view. So the same hierarchy as we use for our views. And then searching recursively, we will search for every data result for our element and then return it. And then we will render it with at render moment. And also we can specify for every element not only the data, but the data for its children, and then recursively search for data in this element. So, and let's speak about what challenges was faced and we are struggling with. So, it's really hard to refresh data. Of course, it's really easy to provide the data and values at the same way. And there is a lot of templates and samples in GitHub when people show how to use the JSON as an analog of website when you provide the same way, the same moment, both the data and the view. But when we work with mobile application, maybe it's not correct to understand for this approach. But I suppose that when we work with mobile application, if it is a real mobile application, we communicate with UI and refresh some kind of data. And sometimes it could be really easy to provide a view and data separately, because when they are put together, it is some kind of misunderstanding of correct architecture. So also we need to separate publishers from all optimization. When we need to get some publishers and provide them in our view models and connect them with our views, we need to predefine all these properties and elements. So it should be done only manually, not optimized. And yes, it's really challenging that our data should have the same path as a view element, because um, you could have some kind of not unique data keys, and if you will provide wrong node for your element, you will get wrong data. So, and the last moment I would like to speak about is navigation, because we are working with applications with more than one screen. And natively, SwiftUI provides us a mechanism to support navigation with navigation view that is a wrapper for our UI navigation controller and navigation link. And this navigation link also contains some kind of label. We click on it and then we go to the destination elements. So we need to support the same way. And also so yes, it is how we could do this with navigation links. And also yes, and it is about that all the links should be provided in code. and it's really tricky, but we could use lazy view to prevent pre-rendering navigation links before we will get on the some screen. And we will use navigation element that will contains two properties: label control and distance control. And all these controls we need to render in special element. Navigation element will show us navigation link, and then we will put the data for distance and for labels, and then they will be rendered in the rules that the element of distance and label type support. And also we need to provide the solution for main navigation. It's for navigation view, and here we will put at the root the first child our main navigation contains. And also we need to provide here its data. And also navigation could be done not only with navigation links. We could use some kind of navigator, for example, when we would like to do navigation not dynamically depending on some kind of properties, but we would like to make it with our button types, for example, because supporting properties for every navigation link could be tricky if we have difficult and complicated application. So we could use some kind of navigation controller based on the UI hosting controller, or we could create some kind of navigation controller using SwiftUI wrapper with rendering our custom stack of views and using it as a pop-in and putting our views in this stack. So in this case, we will call the navigation by tab. The tab is an action, so we need to provide an action. And in this moment, we need to use some kind of parameters. It will be a string, and using the string, we will get the type of the element of the screen we need to show. So, and now let's think about how we could support many screens in our applications in same time. In what moment we need to load them and then process and show how this should be done. At first, we understand that we have an entry point to our application as ScreenItem, and then we could call some configurator, then processor, and then we need to provide a special screen view as a result. So what about JSON and using it for providing the data? I think that the best way, the best moment is to load all the screens at one moment, for example, at the beginning of our application, and then we need to provide special class of screen manager that will also load all the data, process them or call the processor, and then keep the processed screen, not rendered, in our storage, in our local storage. So, and when we will work with it, we will call from scene application from the configurator as an entry point for this screen manager. We will call showing, for example, for us for first screen, and then screen manager will load all the data from service, or maybe not load, but searching for stored screen, and then this stored screen will be put in processor. So you can store as process screen, as not process screen. Maybe you would like to get JSON and store JSON and then process them before you will render. Only at the moment you will render, you need to previously process your screen. It depends on your approach and your architecture. And then at the final, we will get a view that will be shown as a view. And we know that view for screen have an UI hosting is on a screen in UI hosting controller, that is UI view controller, and this UI view controller will be put in our UI navigation controller that is hidden and embedded in our application. So in this way we will get the sequence of our views, and these views will be the analog of our controller, or maybe the views under our controller. So, and finally, you could share the sample. I will upload some data today or tomorrow, so you could check it and use it in your sources. Maybe it's not brilliant, but maybe it will be interesting, because this theme is for this theme is better to use different samples and different approaches for different people to understand what you would like to provide in your own way. So, and what is summary? Yes, it's really big summary for this technology. Though there is a lot of challenges, there is too much challenges. But when we write once, we could use it everywhere. It's a really promising solution to build your own design system, because when you create one sequence of your products, or maybe you have your own company approach, you will prefer to build one time your server driven framework and then use it on all your applications for all your development. And though when you have everything prepared, it will be really promising to create your custom dynamic UI. And of course, it could be really flexible, because you could put all the data in JSON. Of course, it depends on how you will decode it and how you will process it in real elements, but you could also uh, be flexible in your settings of your UI. And though it will be tricky, data could be provided separately. It's really hard to update only part of the data, but we know that there is a one of the speciality of SwiftUI that when we change only one property wrapper, all the screen will be rendered. So, and of course, there is a need to pay a lot of your attention to avoid memory leaks, because there is a lot of pitfalls where you could face different memory leaks. And of course, it's really hard to prepare to processing, but it could be a win-win when you will create it. So there is several samples, several sources about SwiftUI, and some my samples, some sources. And thank you very much. I'm ready for your questions if you have.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you very much for your presentation. I love a summary slide, so thank you very much for including that. Anna, we're going to go straight over to Steph, who's got the questions for you.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
thank you, Anna, for the presentation. We received some questions from the YouTube chat, so I'm going straight over it, and then I follow up with maybe other questions from me. So the first one is from Franklin, who's asking, this architecture seems to increase the network data size. Which type of apps is this architecture best suited for?
Well, how to increase the networking? I think that this is really nice to use with MVVM, and of course, when you will use so when we work with SwiftUI, be honestly, we can use any type of architecture we would like, because we could use our ViewModel as only a state dynamic state for our view, that and this element could contain only some kind of variables we need to listen to. And I think that you could use every type of architecture you would like. And speaking about networking, yes, yes, to do previously, you need to have some kind of configurator or some kind of manager that will load everything for you.
Okay. And what kind of apps is this best suited for? I think more apps like Spotify or Netflix or OTTs like that. Where did you use that?
I think, I think that I'm agree that this is really suitable for such kind of UI where you you could use this approach for different purposes. For example, if you would like to use a dynamic UI, I know the samples where people use it not only for Spotify or other entertainment applications, where they need to only show a list and to create a dynamic player. I also saw a sample where there were a creation of a player using this technology, though it could be really, really tricky, I think so. Uh, but I think that if you will use too complicated UI, you need to spend more time to prepare controls that will be used to rendering. And if you use it with easy application with not complicated UI, of course it will be more promising for these cases. But
Okay.
if your approach and your main goal is to use dynamic changing of your UI, you can use it in different applications.
Okay, I'm going to read the other questions. This one is from SJK27. Due to the use of any, I guess any view as the type, have you experienced any latency while presenting the UI, especially during navigation? And if so, how do we resolve that? And if I may add, this was a question I wanted to ask myself. Does any view have any kind of performance impact? I mean, wrapping any view almost everywhere in the view creation?
Though any view leads to anonymizing your type when you using a build to build a common UI, and when you render all the parts together, there is no loss because you can use some keys on your elements, and then you could specify. So I think that I have missed a slide. So when under its hood, it contains all the elements, and these elements are bound to your rendered view, and also there is a information about what is the data type of it and how and where you should go, for example, from this navigation. I checked it with the navigation element, and though there is an animation to navigate to any view, there is no loss when you are going and showing some other screen. There is okay. So I think that the main impact of this technology is just like when you use any object or any is to simplify the transmitting your data types. But of course, you need previously to check with what type you are getting.
Okay, in the meantime, they're asking if you could please show the slide with all the links you show at the end of the presentation. In the meantime, we're going to show.
You mean the slide with my sources, yes? Or maybe with navigation links? I haven't understood you.
I think it's this one. Okay. Other question is from Franklin. Have you explored using GraphQL instead of JSON?
Well, yes, I have made several solutions with GraphQL, but I think that GraphQL at many times could be really more tricky to use um, for usual purposes and even for SwiftUI. So when you use GraphQL, you need to specify your own decoder, and currently you can decode your data from GraphQL using uh, simple JSON decoding because there is a data payload under its structure, or you can specify the solution with a Apollo client, for example. And the main tricky moment, I think, it could be more tricky to decode the data from GraphQL because of different structure, um, because there is different structure, different elements there is nested types, and there it could be really tricky to use these nested types. So of course, you can use it with any kind of server you would like, because there is a lot of people who love GraphQL, and even there is really challenge moment to decode the data correctly, even not for server-driven UI. You could They prefer to use it because the payload and the data amount is less while using REST. So I have done several applications with the GraphQL, but I think that though it was really tricky for me and and difficult to prepare all the controls, I thought that have not such enough amount of time to prepare GraphQL solution. But it's really a nice idea. Thank you.
And one last question from me, unless other are keep popping out in the chat. From a backend point of view, and from your experience, I mean, should the backend people, the backend developers, think about all the infrastructure out of the box with this kind of configuration in mind? Or, in your opinion, it's best to have a CMS where you input the data and a middleware with an external service that process some other kind of JSON and transform it into some data for the app?
I think that such solutions as server-driven UI should be done not with the backend developer, but it could be done in some kind of administration panels where, for example, designer put together all the elements, and then these elements uh, should be encoded to a JSON that will be provided um, to the client, and then if you have set it up everything correctly, all these changed elements will correctly re-render in your screens. So it's not a work for backender, but it will be some administrator at the server side. I think so. But of course, there is some questions. If one person have created a UI as a prototype in some kind, for example, in Figma, and then this data was encoded to JSON. So why couldn't the developers spend time to create all this UI natively? Well, of course, or maybe why our administrator haven't put all the data for us in ready-made SwiftUI files that we just have uploaded and showed. So there is a lot of questions, and the answer for these questions is because of we need to not only show the static UI, but to communicate with this. So, and for the main question, well, I think this backender shouldn't know nothing about the UI. Maybe he or she should know about the structure of the elements, but not about all the UI at complex and how it will be rendered.
Thank you very much. I think
Thank you.
there are no more questions.
Brilliant. So thank you so much, Anna. Thank you, as always, for your presentation for Swift Heroes, and we hope to see you at future events, either online or in person.
Thank you very much. I was really pleased to show you my presentation today, and I hope I will take part in Swift Hero in next years.
Perfect. See you here in Turin. Brilliant. And
Bye.
Steph, thank you so much for
It was a
joining me
pleasure as
here in the
always.
studio. Always a
Always.
pleasure. Yeah.
Whenever you want.
Awesome. So we'll see each other soon.
Sorry?
We'll see each other soon.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Brilliant.
Ciao.
Thank you, of course, to everybody who's joined us online. Thank you very much for your questions today. We love it when you guys get involved with our event, with all of the content and the opportunities that we provide. So thank you for that. If you want to see more of Swift Heroes content, as I mentioned before, there are still passes available to access all of the content from Swift Heroes 2022. All of the presentations are online. Go to our Swift Heroes website, you can buy a pass there and access all of that content to watch at your leisure. In the meantime, if you want to hit subscribe, I believe it's somewhere down there, subscribe to our YouTube channel, then you don't miss anything ever, and that will be great. We will see you online again very soon. Take care.